Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, wherever you may find yourself today. I really want to thank you for showing interest in our topic which is getting technology right for your organization, not getting the right technology for your organization. Subtle difference, I'm sure will become clear as we go through our presentation. There's a great mix in the audience out there today. Lots of customers of MSP already, and owners, and every kind of business, and participants from Ontario, and Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. If you have questions, please use the Q&A tab as opposed to the chat, and we'll try to answer in line or certainly after the program if that's necessary. So our purpose today really is to share some ideas with you about how you should think about the universe of opportunity with technology and data today for your organization. We also want to give you some comfort that you can make some sense of this increasingly complex but immensely powerful environment that we live in today, and hopefully we'll leave you with a way forward. Let's call it a strategy or our next steps. At the outset, I'd also like to make it clear that our bias is that, yes, everything is digital today, but digital isn't everything. You might have to think through that one, but it's important to consider the right context. Just jumping over to some introductions, just a bit about us. Both Carolyn and I have long and deep experience in what I like to call the intelligent application of technology. So we've been around for a long time, advising organizations on how to use the tools at their disposal to move their business forward, or their organization forward. Speaking for myself, my early career was in finance and strategic planning for very large organizations in Canada, but in the last 3 decades, it's been firmly in the digital world. Initially as a CIO of a couple of large companies, but laterally as the founder and CEO of a technology professional services firm that was national in scope, and which was purchased by MSP about 1.5 years ago now. And since then, it's been great, rapid growth, expanding footprint across the country, and very, very exciting to both of us. Who are you, Carolyn?
Thanks, Jeff. So my name is Carolyn Calder. I'm a member of the digital advisory practice here with MNP. And as Jeff said, we've both been around for a few years. My experience has been almost entirely in the technology industry, but I would say a couple of things. I've always had client-facing roles, so I am very in tune and very focused on the fact that, my clients get the right value from and the right outcomes that they're looking for, and that I understand that that's the most important thing for all of us, whoever it is that we serve, whether it's a constituent or a client, that those outcomes and the value that's delivered has to be there, and that's the name of the whole game. And one of the things that I play in, I'm in that space between understanding the priorities of the business or your organization, and how does technology, digital, data, whatever language you want to use, how that applies to that. And so that is where, the space that Jeff and I are in terms of digital advisory. How do you connect those things? And part of the reason for the conversation today is connecting the dots between what's possible in terms of technology and data, and how does that enable your overall business strategy? Thanks, Jeff.
So in today's session, we're going to set a baseline for participation in what we'll call a modern digital economy, and address some of the possibilities going forward for you. We'll share some stories about some game-changing successes, and we'll examine the potential for how you might go the next step, how you might achieve your goals. And hopefully, I won't say we'll do it, but we'll do it without too many buzzwords.
We'll
So,
try.
many of you will know this, but MNP is a large business advisory. It's a Canadian company established by a very entrepreneurial company, established by a group in Manitoba, about 60 years ago. Today, we're about 6,500 team members, 1,000 partners, and great footprint across Canada. Carolyn and I are part of MSP Digital, and which is growing, the fastest growing part of MSP. And we're now today, I think, about 365 members across the country. And so why us? Why MSP Digital? We're about addressing what's available now and moving on to what's next. And so our services are, if you look under the covers at MSP Digital, and here are some buzzwords, but we cover the right services for today, starting with digital advisory, where Carolyn and I work to apply data, and that's showing you how to use the data you own to empower your organization, to application development, which you would normally consider something like custom development programming. Digital platforms are the tools that you use that are go across functions and you run your business on. Cybersecurity and privacy, we know the need for that. We have very robust cybersecurity business unit. Cloud services, really, how do you manage your data and services in the cloud? And then managed services, which is the blocking and tackling and the infrastructure management that you need to have, but is not core to your business. And it's great if somebody can take the load away from you. And they're all linked. So Carolyn, what's the context for all of this?
Well, the context is this. So as consumers, and we're all consumers, we use technology every day that we hadn't even thought of 10 or 15 years ago. So we've picked a number of brands to share and talk about today, and not in great detail, but by the way, so I have a bunch of questions for you that are really not expecting a specific answer, but I want you to think about it. So, how many of you have a smartphone and use that smartphone? And how many of you use your phone? And if you can't see me on video, I'm putting it in air quotes. How many of you use your phone for things, more for things that aren't a phone call than they are for a phone call? So you're using for apps or texting or taking photos or listening to music. Technology is shifting. How many of you bank online, right? Or use your app to do that? How many of you have gone into a physical bank over the last couple of years? The pandemic has driven us, even if we thought it was accelerating before, it's driven us to virtual in a way that we weren't expecting. How many of you knew what an app was 15 years ago, right? We didn't use that language. We talked about programs and we talked about maybe applications if you were in the technology industry, but everyone knows what an app is now. And when did Google become a verb, right? So, those of us that have been around for a while know that all of this is new, right? It's all new, but it's new and accelerating. How many of you have canceled or reduced the amount you spend on cable TV or satellite and have moved to platforms like Netflix and Crave and Prime, Amazon Prime, for example, or many, many others, and consuming, and that's the language, and consuming this stuff way differently than you used to be? And about Amazon, how many of you actually get, order packages, get them delivered to your home or your business? And some have taken it even further in terms of having things auto-replenished, right? So you sign up and you go, if I'm out of soap, the soap automatically comes in, once a month or once every couple of weeks or whatever you ask. How many of you ever paid for a purchase with Square? And so if you've ever been to a market or a place where there are artisans who typically would deal in cash, and now, cash has kind of been the transport vehicle for, for things we don't want to touch over the last couple of years. So all of a sudden, everybody now previously may not have been thinking about Square has a technology. And so, and how many have used Uber or Waze or in order to book a ride, and you get in a car? Their stuff has changed so dramatically over the last 10 or 15 years that technology exists today. So there's kind of two messages. You're going to say, oh yeah, I'm aware of most of this stuff. I may or may not jump into this economy and participate as somebody who uses social media for communication, etc. But the reality is that your clients are there, your employees are there, and the average individual is now heavily engaged in all ways. And so that's changing how customers and employees and partners and suppliers expect to interact with you. And so number one, you don't want to be left behind. You do want to be the organization that is moving with the times. And if you're behind, take the time to catch up and maybe even leapfrog in some situations. But this has changed. And if you have not jumped in, then let me suggest that it's worth taking a serious look at how technology can help your business. And if you've been a little bit reticent to do that, then part of our purpose for our dialogue today is to show you some examples of how people are doing that. So enough on the soapbox for that. So it's pervasive and it's changing expectations. And we have to live with the expectations. So, and it's accelerating. It's tough for businesses of all sizes to keep up. I've worked with clients that are, small and medium businesses and large global international organizations, and everyone has challenges keeping up with technology. And so it's about understanding the right sequencing and the right technologies in order to enable what you need to do. This is a stat from a company called Infotech, and Infotech is actually Canadian based, but it's a research and advisory firm. If you look at the top, 6% of organizations feel like their technology is ready to transform. We can do something wild and wonderful with this. 14% are ready to expand, right? They've got some good solid stuff in place and they're ready to, they've automated, they put a few things in place, they're ready to expand. But the rest, and if you're, a math geek, 6 and 14 is 20, so 80% are not ready. They have some significant work to do in order to be ready, and IT and technology needs to help. We do have a bias, but we also have a bias for really good reasons. We help people every day figure out the right technologies to move you along that curve. And so we'll not even talk about the people that are struggling. There's a 6% that are, actively struggling with those decisions. So have you thought about, are there areas of your business that are ready for this? You know your business better than we know your business. We know technology. So the purpose of putting these examples up there is take a moment and think about, because this is the space that you've decided to allocate today, to think about technology and digital and what it could do. Take a moment to think about, am I a manufacturer and I need some help in operations? Am I in distribution and I need to figure out, where my inventory is at any point in time? There are pieces of your business that there's likely issues and it's likely a little bit of friction going on now. Do I want a better service with my client? Do I know what's going on with sales? And would technology and automation and or the integration of some of this stuff help you to achieve the business goals? This is not all the technology that is available, but it's a pretty good list of things that used to be wild and wonderful, and people thought they were, advanced for doing some of this stuff. This stuff is not even the most advanced thing. And Jeff and I, in preparing for this, said, let's talk about some things that are fairly, and I won't say common, but it's because it's not common for every client, but more common. We could have taken this up a couple of layers and talked about some really cool technology that's out there, but we want to make it real and we want to make it practical. So think about this from a mobility perspective. We had one client who was spending, each manager, an hour every day traveling back and forth from one location to another. At the beginning of the day, they're in the office for the hour. At the end of the day, they're in the office for the hour. And those being in the office is because they had to bring paperwork and stuff back to the office. And so they put in a small piece of technology in order to capture information mobile, right, on their phone or on their tablet, depending on what they wanted to travel with. And it saves them almost 2 hours per day. That's huge productivity gains for a fairly small investment. And so, have you thought about what mobility could do for you? That's one of the ones that's fairly easy to think about. Cybersecurity, I'm going to go through some of these, lines at a time. Cybersecurity. If you have an online presence, are you sure that it's secure? Are you protecting the data that you're obligated to protect? And we've all read a lot of stuff in the news over the last couple of years, how the people who are maliciously trying to do things actively are looking for opportunities. So you need to make sure that if you are online, that you are being managing your cybersecurity. Artificial intelligence, it's no longer out there. We have things like chatbots. You love to hate them, but you also know what? If I'm looking for a quick answer to a question and I can get that in, 5 or 10 or 15 seconds, the attention spans are getting smaller and smaller. So being able to provide people with access to that and doing it in a way that's economical. So you can have your frequently asked questions, which we used to have in one format, basically enable you to answer questions online for somebody who's looking for information very efficiently. Have you automated your workflow? Have you looked at how the work happens inside your business? Do you have handoffs of information? Is that productive and successful? Is it consistent? Is there an opportunity to automate some of that? Have you looked at collaboration tools? So that people can work from anywhere. People have looked at it, of course, a lot more in the last year and a half than they have prior to that. But have you, taken an active, proactive look at that so people can work from anywhere and collaborate with people not only inside their organization, but their entire supply chain clients, et cetera? And I mentioned online presence. You likely have a website, but have you taken it to the next level, which is, do you understand how what your online brand is? Do you understand how to interact with the social media platforms? And do you understand where those opportunities are for you to advertise, to pull people into your space and find new clients or new suppliers, for example? And this bottom left-hand side on data, that could take up the whole page. We are huge consumers of data, but in particular, data is the new currency, right? It is the thing that is one of the most valuable things in your organization. So once you start putting some of this stuff online, all of a sudden data becomes powerful. So having a lot of manual systems and writing down things captures it, but it doesn't enable you to be able to use that. So taking data and analytics to another level, basic fundamentals are, do you have the information to make business decisions without bias? Without, your gut is worth something, because we all have a gut check when it comes to stuff, but to be able to make business decisions without bias and having access to that data. So putting some of this stuff online actually gives you the ability to then take it another whole level by taking that information and then using it to make great business decisions. We'll talk, you know what robots are, but there's some very cool applications for robots, especially if you're in a mechanical environment or if you're in an environment where something physical needs to get done. Jeff was telling me a story about they actually have someone who has a robot that they're using as an events guide for a particular event, as opposed to having live individuals. It's kind of a gimmick, but it's also very efficient to have someone do that. Are you creating personalized experiences? We talked about earlier about, the customer, your employees, et cetera. Are you creating those personalized experiences? Are you engaging the way your clients, your suppliers, your employees want to engage with you? And that is the expectation. So if you haven't done that, and it's something that may be an objective in your organization, that's certainly worth exploring. We talked about supply chain briefly, but do you have visibility to where things are in your supply chain? Do you know you're not going to run out of a critical part? Do you know that you have the critical access to skills or capabilities as well? And the last one on the right is really about IoT, which is Internet of Things, if you're not familiar with the terminology. And that's about sensors everywhere. And anything from, smart devices to like appliances that are now becoming more pervasive, to if you are in a physical environment, you can have sensors in your environment for things like safety, tracking, et cetera, lots of applications. And having sensors also feeds more data. See previous comment. So advanced technology solutions used to be accessible to only the largest organizations, but that's no longer the case. And so Jeff's going to start talking about what, digital transformation and what it really means. And we'll show you some practical examples of how people of organizations of all sizes are using it.
And so if you weren't already bewildered by this vast array of choices, I think you might be now. So, how can we help? Okay. One thing I would say to the accessibility point is that it's really the democratization of access has proceeded apace over the last 30 years. And it's like nothing else in the last 5 to 10 years. And so it's really leveled the playing field for small companies. In fact, I'd argue that it can give you an advantage over the large. You're more agile, you're more able to quickly seize the opportunity afforded by some of these technologies. The real question is, how do you figure it out? So I want to talk a little bit about digital transformation. It's the major buzzword that we on everyone's lips today. We're tired of hearing about it, and I'm sure you are. But I think we should ask, what is it anyway? Here are 3 definitions, but I like the first one. I mean, digital transformation is not just doing digital. It's a deliberate, strategic repositioning of one's business in today's digital economy. And that strategic repositioning, whatever that may be, is using digital as a means to get there, not as a means to an end. And that was the way it was until very recent history. Things have changed. It's radical change. So you might ask, what are companies, what are small to medium businesses actually doing, Carolyn? If we look at, and this is one list, and there are all kinds of them, I'd argue that it's a good list, but these are the things, the activities that small to medium enterprises are engaging in to get involved in this digital economy. So obviously, Carolyn mentioned mobile and cloud. It's really access to information, service delivery everywhere. And so you need to be engaged in that front. The use case that Carolyn talked about, enormous advantage for very low cost, using off-the-shelf tools with very low coding or what have you required to deliver that efficiency. AI and robotic process automation, I apologize, AI is just math. And the major benefit for companies in this space, in your space, is to use AI, use the math to build better, more personalized customer experiences. There are a whole host of ways to do that. Is extremely accessible. I wish they didn't call it artificial intelligence. It's math, and it's straightforward. Here's a techie term, I suppose, software-defined wide area networks. But that really means that you need to be able to provide wide area access to your applications to users and customers. So it addresses security, privacy, and performance anywhere, anytime. IoT, we know all about it. Sensors have changed the planet. We have a couple of very exciting things going on in a couple of areas. One I'd like to mention is precision agriculture. We're going to feed the world because we've learned how to be very precise about measuring outcomes in the field, but also environment controlled agriculture, vertical farms, which depend on the ability to censor in real time everything that's happening, are promoting a huge growth in this area.
Sorry, John.
Okay. We have a I've witnessed, and I come from an analytics background, a very exciting. We have some cannabis customers. As you know, it's a high growth industry in this country. But where they're gaining their advantage is in the continuous, precise measurement and improvement in productivity in the farm. I mean, in the plant, and coupled with all of that information is tremendous analytics and the ability to exploit the data you've got and use tools like Power BI and low code and things like that to enable your people to actually deliver actionable information in your own operation. Take the things into your own hands. So I'd like to make one final point on this question.
Okay.
Everything depends on data. For us, data is the new oil. That's the buzz phrase. But you need to be using data and the right metrics to manage your business. You know, where customer and operating and financial data are being collected at an exponential rate. You need specialized expertise to help you understand how to organize it. And don't get hung up on volumes and questions like that. Data storage is essentially free in the scheme of things. And so is hardware. It's not about that. And so you should be doing everything you can to collect, whether you know that is meaningful today or not, the data that will enable you to deliver on the government's requirements of your business, but also to put you in a position to make new kinds of decisions and offer new service offerings. And you know, your competitors are going to be doing this. Your digital competitors are moving more quickly because they've got a handle on their data architecture and how they use data. And that's the fastest way to get up the curve. I think you need advice on that. So given this, let's look at some actual clients and some of the things that they've done and continue to do. Got a mix of stories here for you.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So I've got a few examples. Norcron is a 10-person organization. They are a quinoa production company. I always pronounce that incorrectly, by the way, because I read it before I learned how to pronounce it. Small aside. They're very limited in terms of their technology. They didn't keep up with the growth, so they were a small and expanding company. And they asked us for some help. And so we went in, assessed the requirements, worked with them on their priorities because they understand their business, helped them with a vision and a strategy, and really understood their requirements and guided them through a selection process for, what is the right size solution for me. And they've now grown into an organization that is providing solutions in their products. And now they've expanded their product selection as well to companies like Costco across North America. So this small 10-person organization figured out how to use technology to further enable their growth. It was a limiting factor prior to then. We have another organization, Meadow Lake Tribal Council. So this is a First Nations community that of 9 different tribes. They're responsible for doing things like delivering health and education to their community, pretty critical to be able to leverage technology to do that. They had some issues with what was in place. So they had some technology, but they had issues with it. They hadn't updated, they hadn't put in the right pieces in order to ensure that it was available and reliable and secure. And so they had some concerns around that. And so they wanted somebody who could guide them start to finish. And we were engaged to look for the whole solution from the beginning. And this is going to be a common theme, by the way, really understanding strategy. What's your company strategy? What's your organizational strategy? And then road mapping it through to the implementation. We understand, and in this case, there's not an infinite blank check, right, to write, but it's about figuring out what are those things that will have the greatest impact and putting the right case around those. And so we work with them not only on the strategy and the implementation and selection of partners, we also worked with the council on funding. And so there is a federal program for them, and there have been regional and federal programs that can help with innovation and advancing technology. And so we'll talk about that at the end of our presentation in terms of, that's something that we also are happy to have a conversation about. So there could be funding available. And so for Meadow Lake, they now have, through this process of going through and picking the right pieces of the solution and then figuring out how it all works together, they have infrastructure, which is a fancy word for the right hardware and software and apps and solutions in order to service their community that they really needed. And they haven't done it in a way that's sustainable and secure and reliable, and they're building upon that with additional services. The next example is was a small organization founded in 2016. They're a full service interior specialist. So I'm going to read this. Their vision is to provide comfortable, efficient, well-designed workspaces, allowing individuals to flourish. And I look around at the workspaces over the last year and a half, and sometimes envious of some of that stuff that was in place. They needed data. Everything was manual. They wanted to scale. Sounds familiar. We helped them with, what is the right strategy? How do you layer digital and technology over that and create a plan? The plan needs to make sense. It needs to have the right return on investment. We need to make some good decisions about what are the right pieces and implement those pieces in the right order. And so now they have access to a ton of information, and it's mobile. You'll hear a common theme as well. They have access to work orders and planning and sales information. And they have been able to grow to 3 times that with the enablement of technology. And so some pretty significant growth opportunity for that organization. We also do business, in public sector. So we wanted to make sure we included an example of a public sector situation. This is a small municipality in Canada that they have the needs of a large city, right? But they're small and they have a limited budget. And so they were looking at budget reduction and in the process, they made some decisions to implement some older technology. And, we weren't involved in that initial, but we got brought in partway through it because it wasn't going the way they planned. They weren't really being modern in terms of their thinking. They had a roadblock. And so we helped them understand, okay, you are where you are. Where do we go now? How do we take advantage of what you do have and then put a plan in place that makes sense for you from a business perspective and a financial perspective to move to a more modernized solution? And so our approach to them and with all of our clients is very, practical, sustainable. Like, how do we do this? It's not one size fits all. It's really understanding how that works for our clients. So they now have they have taken advantage of that investment and are building upon that as well. Fueled is an organization that, this is an interesting one. I'm trying to think of how many people they were at the time. It's not coming to me. They had implemented an accounting package, so they'd done some modernization, but then they had the situation where they had 2 individuals that were responsible for taking information from multiple different systems, pulling them into an Excel spreadsheet, and then using that Excel spreadsheet as the game plan or the book that they used to run their business. All of their information came from that spreadsheet. So number one, having one spreadsheet that contains all this information immediately, I think, what's the risk of something happening to that? And then having 2 individuals full-time doing it. This is a startup. They can't afford to have two individuals full-time focused on Excel spreadsheets. So they were looking for a solution that brought them into today's world, but we come up with a 2-pronged approach. We said it's going to take you a few months to get a solution, the right solution in place. And they're like, oh, that's not going to work. That's too long. We need to have a modern solution in place. What can we do in the meantime? And so we came up with a solution to automate some of that integration of those information and automate some of the reporting so that these 2 individuals could then be redirected to sales and business development, which is one of the things that's most important for a startup organization. So they had the information to run their business. And now they're now in the process of, in the right time, implementing the rest of the solution. So and will be able to do things like further leverage the data that they're collecting as they implement these integrated solutions. And so those are a few examples of some smaller organizations that some of them are startups, some of them are public sector, some of them are private sector. And Jeff's going to talk about a couple of larger, more complex, but pretty cool examples of how we're enabling some businesses.
Thanks, Carolyn. Before I do, I learned something from Carolyn this morning. Lemon is good for your throat. Someone commented that I should speak up, so I apologize. Got something going on here, but thank you. So yes, a couple of larger enterprise scale, very large solutions. The first is public services. We're very proud of work we've done to the transformation of Ministry of Social Services in Saskatchewan, specifically their income assistance program. And it's up and running. It will continue to improve. But basically, we delivered self-service to clients, which has taken out a whole lot of process, paperwork, time, and money to deliver what is really needed is delivery of payments and service to over 30,000 clients. The point I would make here is that all of the technology that's provided is on using platform tools that are available to you at scale. So there's a direct connect. So customer engagement is something that you're looking for. The tools are available at a form factor that is available to small and medium business imminently. So that's a great public sector example. And we're moving that out across the country because we all know the time is right for public sector to take advantage of technology in a more meaningful way. And another example of a large enterprise is work that we did with a longstanding partner, Enbridge. Enbridge has a great team, and they work with our team to specifically our AI and machine learning and analytics team to build solutions for their ongoing business, essentially a framework that enabled them to simplify design and planning processes, but also to connect them to operating systems, to model future operating systems, and to deliver real-time insights into how they can better address their challenges. A big area of opportunity is in renewable energy, and we've learned a lot, and they've learned a lot. One of the things that we did to make this work was we embedded a team in a lab format to build these new solutions together with Enbridge, and that was very important. And I just want to point out that we have a launch event coming up on November 26th that will provide more detail on what's going on there, and also some insight into technology futures from IDC. So it's probably Carolyn will give you the deets at the end, but it's worth considering. So the question is, how do I know what's right for me? Like I said, it's a huge problem to address. But I have to say that it's critical that you start with a clear view to your vision for your organization. I'm going to read this. What's right for you and your business and your customers and your suppliers and partners and your employees. I know it's motherhood. I think last time I checked, motherhood was a good thing. And it's really important that, again, that the vision is there and that you do the environmental scanning as part of the development of the vision to understand what the competition is doing. Because this is a race, and it's a race it's going at a pace that we've never seen before. So we should look at some things, like find a challenge that's keeping you up at night. What is the business driver? Or find an idea that you have that you really want to evaluate and consider addressing. And are there things that you can do using tools like RPA and IoT, that's it, sorry, to deliver answers and efficiencies in your organization? Just with regard to competition, I don't know if you've been watching the news of the satellite shoot down by the Russians this week, but the Starlink has launched literally thousands of satellites already that has transformed the way a whole host of industries are operating. And it used to be, as little as 2 years ago, a great thing to be using drones to monitor your crops. Don't use drones anymore. Use these satellites that are as big as your hand to give better resolution, better information globally all the time. And you have to think about that as an opportunity for disrupting a whole bunch of industries. So without giving you a really deep process, I had a Harvard Business Review business professor, finance professor, whose favorite thing after posing a tough question was, what do you do? What do you do? And it's very annoying when he did it. But the answer is very simply, without a big model, as I said, develop a vision, look at the business outcomes first, really think about your culture. This can be a killer or a winning strategy for you, but make sure your culture is ready to address the change that is going to be needed. Be really good about allowing experimentation. Innovation occurs when you're allowed to play and make mistakes and try new ideas. And it works usually in a flat organization, or at least a flat information sharing architecture where everybody's ideas, the best ones, rise to the top. Also, again, change management, of course, goes without saying, but you need to reward agility. You need to reward people that are making things happen. And to do that, to allow them to be able to do that, training is essential. And training includes the entire organization. You know, lots of people in this room are in the financial area, and typically finance has responsibility often for IT, and typically or often the priorities of IT are not heard because there's not a good understanding at the leadership team of the opportunity to employ technology to change business. So training and awareness is required from the CEO on down. And so great leadership by the CEO is critical to your success. Not to mention data again. You need to have someone help you understand how you can best use the data that's part of your business to improve your business. And then print it, publish a roadmap. And it can be as deep or as simple as you want, but it should be deep enough to show the way to achieve your vision. Carolyn has a process.
So this is, there will be a test. We're going to ask you to be able to regurgitate it now. This is just an example. We have an approach. We have a comprehensive methodology. But the most important, so you can, if you're a technical person, you know some of these terms. But if you're not, the simplest version is, this is what you need to think about. You need to start with assessing the current environment, as you've heard me say a number of times, and envision where you want to take your company or your organization. You need to have that process of ideation, and that's fancy word for generating ideas and designing where you want to go, whether it's a particular solution or whether it is part of the strategy to transforming for digital. And the circles are intentionally there to represent what Jeff was talking about. You have to try some things. So when it comes to creating a digital strategy, It's not intended to be a PowerPoint deck or a Word document that lives on your laptop or on a shelf somewhere printed out. It's an active document. So you have to look at it and your decisions as iterative, right? So you'll go through cycles of try some stuff, learn from it, and then use that learning to inform your next decision, and then do it again. And doing it iteratively allows you to kind of reduce the risk, but also really put energy behind those great ideas and then execute, evaluate. And so this is a typical kind of process that we would use in helping someone figure out how to transform their organization, starting with the very beginning piece and then throughout the process. And it's important to have some of those fundamentals, the stages in place, and then the concept of iterating through some ideas to be successful. We're going to wrap, and we're going to have time for Q&A. I see there are some questions there, but we wanted to leave you with a handful of takeaways before we get into the actual Q&A session, and we'll allow people to post questions. So feel free to do so if you've had any saved up. And we talked about this. What are some things if we go away with nothing else but this? What is it? Have a strategy to begin with, but then align the strategy. So whether it's your business strategy aligning with your digital strategy should be part of your strategy, right? All of a sudden it's no longer a digital strategy over here. It is actually part of how you're going to create the organization in your future. We say engage a trusted advisor. It doesn't have to be M&P. You likely have people that you're working with, but it's very difficult to have all of those capabilities inside a large organization, let alone smaller organizations. So whether it's for the strategy side of the things or data or pieces of it, find those handful of organizations that you trust and engage them to help you, because they're the experts. Just like we go to, somebody in an area of expertise, your physician for medical advice, you need to go to the people who really understand digital and data for advice on that. So, when you're looking at analyzing and understanding those, engage somebody you trust. Jeff mentioned this before, there is a size for everyone. So it is important to decide to participate and to innovate. And you can improve and you can innovate. It is possible. There's companies that are a handful of people who are doing some really interesting things that are impacting their business in a positive way. And they're starting with, the priorities and understanding what they can do. And the last thing is around getting in touch. So, we're sponsoring this event today. And so we want to encourage you that if you want to have a discovery conversation where we can say, answer questions and have a discussion around what you're trying to do, please do reach out. We're happy to take those discussions. And as Jeff mentioned, we'll send this in the follow-up. We have Enbridge next 26th. I don't know what day it is, the 26th. And it's going to be a very interesting conversation. It's always great to have such a successful set of projects with a client that they're willing to actually, come to you and speak about their experiences. But in this case, it's a great opportunity to get the story from Enbridge firsthand and to find some very interesting technologies. So we'll send a link to that in the follow-up so that if you are interested in hearing more, or if you're interested in going to another layer, we've not gone into all the possibilities of all the technologies. We just tried to illustrate some specific client stories and approach, some of the things that we think are the most important. But what's most important for you, you know that best, and we're happy to help you if you have any questions or if you want to have those initial conversations. So I hope this has been helpful. We'll take some questions and have a bit of dialogue now if you like.
Carolyn, while you were talking, there were a couple of questions on funding available. I think the answer is yes, generally, but But there are different programs federally and provincially across Canada. Some are better than others. Some are further along than others. But safe to say that digital adoption is really in the top of everybody's list. They're trying their best. And I just mentioned, a program that we participated in Atlantic that was private sector managed, public or federal government funded to deliver essentially a digital boost to companies, to deliver a digital roadmap for companies. And the take up on it was extraordinary. So lots of companies saw that, and it helped that there was financing for it, but lots of companies appreciated the opportunity to have some insight in how they might participate.
And I'm looking at a couple of other questions. Someone has, I don't know if someone maybe answered to that. Sorry, I can't see the question.
Go ahead, I did that, but you go ahead.
Oh, you did, okay. So I just wanted to, if there are any other questions. So there were some questions around, how does this apply to me? And so generally speaking, if it's around working with your clients, there are workflow tools and tools that are called customer relationship management tools, or CRM. If you're not familiar with the term, you want to Google that and have a look at that. There are certainly solutions in that space. So the combination of workflow to help you get your work done. There are case management tools for people that are in the professional services business. I see some questions for people that are in law firms. There's specific legal software, but there's also generic software that helps you to manage cases or jobs. If you're in construction industry, there are other pieces of software and availability to manage and learn from the work itself. And somebody was asking about a specific slide. Slide 28, I don't know which one that is. And I'm happy to put it back up if you're interested in seeing it again. This one? So whoever had that question, if you have any questions, Sean, if you have any questions on that or want to post anything there, I'm happy to answer any questions. So probably just want to take a quick screenshot of the process, but that's okay. Oh, okay. So yes, we will be. Someone's asking around missing part of it. Is there a link? There is a link that's going to be sent after the session, and you'll be able to look at the messages again. So, and if you like, and you want to have any further clarification, feel free to reach out. In the link on the last slide is also contact information for Jeff and I. So feel free to reach out through an email. It's probably the most efficient for you offline to send us an email and pick a time to have a conversation. We're just looking at the chats. I'm reading a question. I'm just going to read it. So as one of the individuals was talking about a CRM implementation, and that there's the complexity, I guess, of implementing a customer relationship management system gets complicated with the details and data. And so suggestions on the implementation of that in terms of the implementation process. So my first piece of advice is and Jeff, I'll let you jump in if you like. My first piece of advice is always to do things iteratively. Rarely does the big bang approach work. It's pretty disruptive. So from implementing a customer relationship management piece, you need to pick a scope of that first implementation that addresses some of the top priorities that you're trying to address. And you need to know what that is. And then implement that, and then add new features and new functions. And that may or may not be the exact answer you're looking for, but that's the first thing. The other thing I would say is there was a question around the data. The one mistake that some people make is that they don't think about the data they're collecting until after they actually do a system implementation. So I'm working with 2 clients right now who have said, I need to get the following information from a report. They're not collecting the information. So that's the other piece I would say is as you're implementing any new system, put some thought in that early design and thinking side of things so that you can get the information you're planning on out of the system at the end. That's pretty critical. It's something that some people have missed. And these are individuals who have made some significant investments. So if you're going to make an investment, make sure that you always begin with the end in mind and then work your way back to, okay, what are the steps to get you there? I'll stop now, Jeff, so you can jump in.
No, great points. And two things. One, CRM is a great example of one of those solutions that are available to everybody, but also can be way too much for everybody. And so, yes, technology used to be about reducing complexity, not increasing it. And so start simple and iterate is very wise, or iterate is very wise counsel. And you can certainly do that with the tools that are available today without breaking the bank. If someone tries to sell you a monolithic solution, show them the door because they're not acting in your best interest.
So we're at time. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to have a discussion around some of the things that we think about in terms of technology and how that applies to clients of all different sizes and all different industries. And so we will be sharing the links for the upcoming briefing that we have on the 26th. We'll also share with you the information on how to get in touch with us. You know, it is our business to do this for clients. So of course, you know, we're looking for people who are interested in working with us, but the first conversation around exploration, feel free to reach out if you'd like to have any of those conversations. We're happy to have them. And we'll also send our website link. So if you want to look up anything more, some of these case studies and stories are there as well. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, everybody.